All right. Thank you for joining us today. We're going to do a little bit of an intro here and let everyone kind of pile in as we reach this 11 o'clock hour here. Today, we're doing our Phase 3 webinar of our ongoing series. Leading this today is myself, Victoria Anderson, and we also have a couple of other InterProse staff here as well, Cheryl Clapp and Joe Fouts, who are going to help us with the Q&A later. All of our sessions are recorded and placed on our help desk, so if you miss one or would like to review, please go check those out there. We're also putting out a ton of documents and things related to each of our releases, so please, those will be out on the help desk as well. You can go check those out and review them. If you don't find what you're needing there, reach out to support. We really are trying to be here for you guys to help you out through this time here. We are also putting out release notes in addition to our webinars and our help docs. Those are emailed, so if you're, please look out for those. If you are not receiving your release notes in your email, please let us know so we can make sure and get you signed up. We are going to go through some content today, so just like the other webinars, I'm going to keep you all muted until the end, and then we will unmute for a Q&A session so we can get through all of our content. We are scheduled for an hour today, but I don't foresee us going for the whole hour unless we have a lot of questions at the end. So let's go ahead and dive in and look at our new content. So we're going to start off by reviewing our newest feature here, which is called Preferred Time Windows. And this is a feature that allows you to set a preferred time to call each demographic. So we're going to go to an account and check that out. I'm going to go to my recent accounts here and go to my sample account. And I'm going to go, this feature is located at the demographic, so I'm going to use the summary section and click on the name here. So inside the demographic, we're going to scroll down and we will find a new window called Preferred Contact Time. And actually, when you see this, it will be unchecked. It'll look like this. It'll be blank here. So when you click this box here, and this is when your consumer says, I want you to call me between such and such time on whatever day, and you can set that here. So we're going to bump this open again, and we can go ahead and set some times here. So these are sliding bars, and if your consumer says, I want you to only call me between 5 and 6 p.m. on Monday and Thursday, this is how you would set that up. So you'll notice as I'm scrolling here, the time is changing, and we can get this to 6 p.m. here. All right. So just in the evenings after work maybe, and then let's do Thursday. All right, so that's how you would set that up. And once you've put that in there, you're going to want to make sure you hit apply here on the screen to save that. When you're setting these bars, one thing to know that's important is that you're setting these from the consumer's time zone. So you want to keep that in mind. If they say, call me between 5 and 6, you're going to want to set these literally like just 5 to 6 like that, like I've done here. If there are multiple addresses on the account, the preferred calling time is based on the primary demographic's priority 1 address. And something else to keep in mind is that these time zones are calculated by the zip code of that demographic. Currently, you can only set one range per day, as you'll notice here, but we do plan on updating this in the future to accommodate for multiple ranges per day. So maybe it'd be from 7 to 8 a.m. and then 5 to 6 p.m. These preferred contact time fields are available to be sent to your dialer vendor. However, it's likely they're not supported by your dialer vendor at this time. So our recommendation for best practice is to not include them accounts with the use preferred contact time in dialing campaigns. These preferred contact times can be set on each demographic on the account. So we're going to go look at another demographic. I'm going to go back to my account view page here. Scroll down. All right, let's see, and I got a spouse demographic set up here. And we'll go back down to this preferred contact time section, and then you'll notice that we are able to set up a completely different preferred contact time for each demographic. To aid you in working and calling accounts with these preferred contact times set, you can add the preferred contact times to the summary section of the account. There are several fields. I'm going to highlight a couple of them, and then we'll go look at some of the other fields that are available. So one of them, if you can see here, it's a little bit small, but one of them says preferred contact time. And this one is your consumer's time that they have established with you. So if your consumer, so this is what reflecting of what you put in that bar. And if they don't have a preferred contact time that day, this field will show as blank. The other field that I find particularly useful as well is this one called preferred contact time local. And the difference between these two fields is that the preferred contact time local is your agent's time zone. So this will aid you in not having to calculate of when it's appropriate to call your consumer if they're in a different time zone. So let's go look at some of the other preferred fields that are available for both the summary section and logic blocks. Let's go to the add here. And these all start with preferred contact time. And you'll notice that there are many more in here. So I'm using, and you'll see the different demographics as well. So I've got the primary demographic in there, but you'll notice that we have specific days of the week as well. So if you'd like to be have more detail in there rather than just having it blank, you can have that in there as well. And these are available for logic blocks, so you can also set up workflow to help you work accounts that are within their preferred contact time with logic blocks. Okay, so next we're going to start looking at some additional features, additions to features which have already been released. What a tongue twister. So if you'd like to see the features that we're going to look at full in depth, I suggest going to our help desk and looking at our phase 1 and 2 webinar recordings, because these are just going to be kind of highlighted pieces of those. The first one we're going to look at is under our compliance screen. If you remember going to setup and compliance, we looked at all the things in here, our contact window and how to set up some of this restricted account stuff. But we do have a new field in this contact window, and that's going to be this guy here, which is your max consent to contact days. This is for when the account is restricted and your consumer has consented to contacting them. This contact can occur one time in the number of days listed in the fields, and that override is on the account page, and we're going to go check that out. So we're going to go back to our account here. And you'll notice that it's this field right here in the notate account section, consent to contact with this Boolean field here. So when this is checked, you're authorized to make one more contact, and that's going to include a call, whether it's in a dialing campaign, an email, a text, whatever that contact may be, for the number of days listed in that maximum consent to days field there. So let's go in and actually put in a call here, just a sample one. Let's see, we'll use an action code, select a phone number, and hit apply. Okay, and we're gonna go check out our phone log. And here's the call that we just made. And you'll notice that there is a new field here called consent to contact. This will be really helpful if you're going to be using that. And so just as a reminder how to add these columns in here, you're going to right click on your mouse and it's going to bump open this table here, and you'll select consent to contact. and hit apply, and then you'll be at consent to contact second down here. Hit apply and you'll be able to have this in your table. Another feature that we've added is with our itemization transactions, and that is to add a warning for transactions which occur prior to that itemization date. And I'm going to go back to this itemization tab here. So now when you're posting a transaction, it could be an adjustment or adding another itemization transaction before this itemization date displayed here, you're going to get a warning on your screen. It will still post, but you'll get a warning. So we're going to kind of mess with these transactions that I have down below to mimic what will happen. So let's go down to these transactions here, and I'm going to, our itemization date is 10/6/2009, and that's what the date is the same for this transaction. So I'm going to edit this to make it earlier than that so we can show that error, or it's not an error, the warning, excuse me. Let's do 1/1/2009 and hit save. Okay, and you'll notice that I do have a warning here. Warning, transaction saved, but the itemization transaction posted is prior to the itemization date. So you'll get your warning, and then here you'll still notice it did still update and make that post. So we still have the 1/1/2009 date here. You'll also get these on other tabs such as post transaction and post adjustment as well. The wording is a little bit different on the warning, but the same will apply. It will post to the account, but a warning will be displayed. And lastly, we're going to look at some other miscellaneous additions. And one of them is in our credit reporting. So we're going to go to our credit reporting vendor that I have set up here. I'm going to go to Setup, Vendors, and Credit Reporting. I have a little sample vendor set up here. And our new field on this credit reporting vendor screen here is going to be this one right here, use itemization creditor name. So when this field is checked, the file will include the itemization creditor name in place of the original creditor's name on the file. However, if there's no itemization creditor, then the original creditor will be used. And if there's no original creditor, then the client company name will be used. So there is a little bit of a waterfall there. And in addition, we've also added some bundle validation fields. So we're going to check them out in the summary section, but you can also access them through logic blocks. So let's bump open my summary section again here. And I'll draw your attention to this last segment here, and you'll notice a couple of things here. We have the last letter, which is the validation letter on this particular account, and then the new bundle validation field called Bundle Last Validation Notice Sent Date. So again, we have these set up in a couple of areas for you to utilize your summary section and then in logic blocks. So if the agent wants to or needs to view validation letter info within the bundle, these fields will be really helpful in the summary section. And then in logic blocks, it may be helpful to use these fields to determine workflow based on validation notice data within your bundle as well. So those are a couple of options that you have with these types of fields. And that is actually the end of our newest content. We will have another release on 11/21, which will be our phase 4 release. In that release, we are going to have our itemization bundle groups or sub bundles, which was originally intended for this release but has been pushed back to the next. And we're also going to be showing our client access manual entry for new itemization stuff for the client access screen. I do want to mention that that particular webinar, we've been hosting these at Thursdays at 11. On that particular webinar, that Thursday is the Thanksgiving holiday, so we will be hosting that one on a Wednesday. So please keep that in mind. We'll be doing it a day sooner at the same time. All right, so now that we've kind of got through all our content, we're going to go ahead and open up the floor for a Q&A. I'm going to unmute you as the crowd, but if you would like to ask a question, you'll need to make sure to also unmute yourself. We found that you tend to be doubly muted with this webinar feature. So I'm going to go ahead and unmute you. Okay, so you should be all unmuted. So if you would like to ask a question, please unmute yourself as well, and you should be able to ask a question. If you are trying to speak and not able to, please let me know, and I can try and work my magic over here. All right, any questions?
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, sorry, I had to change some of my settings.
No worries.
I have a question about the itemization creditor name. On the Metro 2 screen, you showed us that box to check. Where is that mapping from? So is that something we need to be mapping in loaders, or can we tell it, you know, the name of our client is the itemization creditor name? Where would it be pulling that from?
Meg, can you repeat that? Go ahead, Joe.
Oh, I was just going to say there's a setting you can set on the client at the client level for what the default field should be, but then you can also override that field on each individual account and set it manually.
Can you show us where that is in the client profile?
Absolutely. Let's go to our sample client here. And we have a section in here specific for the itemization preferences, this guy. And so you'll have your itemization. Oh, I don't see that one here. Actually, is it not in this section,
Yeah.
Joe?
Yeah, I think that's now on the compliance screen.
Okay. Let's go there.
Well, I thought we had it for client as well, though.
I'm not seeing it on the compliance screen. Let's see. Let's go back to a profile.
Yeah, so it looks like we might need to get some clarity on that.
Yeah.
My understanding is itemization name is not required at all. So it will waterfall, meaning that if it's not populated, that's fine. As long as the original creditor name is populated, it will use that instead. If that's not populated, that's fine too, because then it will use the client company name, which is a required field.
That makes perfect sense. It just...
That is correct.
Okay.
Yep. And I think that we do have something out in the help files on that waterfall if you need any further clarification on that.
Yeah, and I understand the waterfall. It just seems odd that it's looking for one thing, and I don't yet see a way for me to tell the system what that thing is. So it would always be empty. Okay, thank you.
Okay, there was a question here in the comments. It says, are the consent fields now available through logic blocks or through SQL for export? And the answer is yes, all the fields are available, and we'll be providing the files by next week or so that will include the identification of the fields that are available for SQL and logic.
I'm so sorry, I do have another question.
Sure.
All right. So if a consumer makes contact via virtual assistant, is that considered a contact, and how does ACE record that?
Are you saying an email? Go ahead, Joe. Sorry.
Virtual agent is not considered a contact.
It's, I think that so are you talking about an email contact or a phone contact? Because they're not doing phone contacts via virtual
Uh,
agent.
Neither. If they go to our website and interact with the virtual agent, is that counting as a contact, is the question.
It
No,
is not.
no. Yep,
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, good question.
it is.
So back to the creditor name, sorry about that. It's actually on the itemization screen where you enter that.
Here it is. Yeah, the itemization creditor name. That's where it's pulling that from.
Yeah, so that's going to show up by default based on the waterfall, but it can be changed there, or if itemization data is being loaded via a ETL loader. So there will be something populated there
Okay.
based on the waterfall, because I believe our client records require their client name. So if none of the other options are there, it will be populated by that client name.
That's helpful. Thank you.
Mhm.
Awesome. All right. Do we have any other questions? I will mention while we have a moment here, our next, depending on, we have an hour chiseled out for each of these webinars. I will say, depending on how much content or depending on the feature, they may vary in length. So I do expect our next webinar to be a little bit on the longer side due to the content that's coming out. So keep that in mind, especially, around the holidays. Hopefully most of you will be able to attend our next one, but that's something to keep in mind.
Yeah, I'd also like to mention, since we'll be going over the grouping, the itemization grouping, our itemization bundle groups, it will be really beneficial, I think, particularly for people who handle medical debts, and also for people who maybe have just been interested in some sort of a sub-bundle type option that we haven't had access to. So right now in ACE we have one bundle per per group of accounts. So if you need some kind of a sub-bundle option, you'll definitely want to either attend that webinar or definitely view that content, because it should be very informative and useful.
Okay, I do want to address the question. There was a question of if we could do the webinar on Tuesday instead of Wednesday, and unfortunately Tuesday did not work out with some of the things we have going on internally here. However, all of our webinars are recorded and put out on the help desk, and if you aren't able to make that and are just watching the recording but would still be able to ask questions about the content in there and interact with the content there, my suggestion would be to either reach out to support if that's the way you'd like to go, or write down your questions and bring them to the next webinar. We recognize that, as we go into the holidays and are rolling out these webinars, that it's going to be a little tricky, and we'll be happy to address your questions live and take the time to go back to the feature and show some things if we need to. Yeah, absolutely. We'll make sure we got you covered. It's one of the main reasons we wanted to do these webinars, so we have the chance to interact with you guys on the spot. So okay. Looks like Julie, I'm gonna try and find you in here. So you're unmuted on my end, but you may need to try and unmute yourself on your end by clicking the microphone. We've had some issues in the past of not being able to unmute yourself very easily. So Yeah, it tells you you can't. Okay.
Julie, I noticed that there are 2 instances of your name. Have you tried unmuting both of them?
Let's see. Looking for her in the list here.
And
Julie. Let's see.
I'm not sure what your specific question is. I can try to address it. You said about manually loading accounts with itemization. And right now on the front end, your agents can add a new account, save it, and then add the itemization pieces. However, down the road, there will be some sort of additional help there. The next
I
session
got
we're
it.
going to be,
There
oh,
you
there you
go.
are. Hi.
I'm sorry.
Oh,
You know
you're good.
what? I was logged in twice because I log in on my phone for the hearing part of it, and then I log on the computer so the screen's bigger and I can see what's going on. This is my question. When we're loading accounts manually, and we still have a lot of clients that we load manually, are we going to be able, because I want to use data service, so we're going to have to put in all the fields of the payments, the credits, we're going to have to add all that up. Plus we have collection fees on a lot of them. So we're going to have to fill in those itemizations. Are we going to be able to just fill those fields in as we're loading the accounts without having to post transactions towards them?
Yeah, depends. That's a kind of a loaded question. So as long as your data and your dates line up correctly between your account and your itemization record, yes. But sometimes if the date of the transactions you're plugging in don't quite match the requirement for the itemization record, there are times when you may have to post an assignment transaction to match your itemization transaction. So in other words, that has to do with balances. It's a little hard to probably dig into here, but that might be something you could reach out to support for some assistance in looking at.
Okay, so as I'm looking at the itemization box, and I'm not trying to enter a new business right now, but I'm just in a John Doe account, and then I clicked on the itemization. Of course, the date we're going to have to load, in the source, or something that can be put in from the client, depending. But certain fields you can't click on, like the balance as of itemization date, you could put an amount in there. But then when
Yep.
you come down to plus interest, plus fees,
Yep.
are those fields going to be open is my question when we're manually loading accounts?
Yep, it's a good question. Actually, to change that, right, you would need to add an itemization transaction below that falls within that, you'd want that to fall within that proper range, i.e., you've got an itemization date, and if there are transactions after that itemization date that were before assignment, that need to impact that plus interest and plus fees and minus payments and credits, you would post those as itemization transactions below, and they will change the balance above.
Just to
Okay, so we
answer your
are going to
specific
have to.
question, you will have the ability on the account new screen where you manually input an account. You will have this section for itemization where you can insert transactions manually one by one before the account is actually created. So that will exist. It's being worked on.
Okay, that's my question because, for instance, if we have 500 new accounts and we have to manually put those in, and if somebody has to make 3 transactions or 4 transactions per account, that's going to take forever. So I was wondering if we just, like say we have $1,000 and there was $500 in payments and credits, is there going to be a place we can just put $500 as payments and credits to make the balance $500?
Well, you can certainly enter that as an itemization transaction, just a single one. Does that make sense?
Okay, we can. Okay, but
Yeah,
you're
there's
saying on
nothing
the new
stopping.
account screen, you're still working on that to be able to put that information in.
Correct.
No, I'd like to correct that a little bit. You'll still be entering those as itemization transactions that will be
Yes.
rolled up as the plus interest and plus fees. But you can do it as a single transaction or you can do it as multiple transactions. So that would be the
Okay.
same as it is here. The difference really will be whether you have to create the account and then save it before doing it, which is the case right now. Down the road,
Right.
you'll be able to do that as you're creating the account, but it'll still require you to enter an itemization transaction, either one or multiple, for each of those values, the interest or the fees or the payments and credits.
Okay. So, and if there's an error, if somebody doesn't do it right, because that's going to happen, it will give us that itemization mismatch, and we can go back into that transaction and fix it.
Yep, you can remove it
without having to post an adjustment.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Okay. That was my biggest question. And I know some of these things are not in what the webinar was about, but I thought since we had time, and I can't believe I'm the only one that's wondering about this, so I thought, well, I'm going to go
Oh,
ahead and ask.
no, it's a great question, and I imagine there are a lot of people wondering about those things, and kind of as we're working through these processes. Absolutely, yeah. Those are calculated fields. That's why you can't enter directly into them, because down the road they need to also include account transactions, right? So even though it's something that applies to the account after the itemization date, has to be reflected here because it has to be reflected on your validation notice. So it's kind of important that we make sure those are up to date all the time, so they're calculated. That's why it's either one, you can enter one itemization transaction for your new account, but we don't really open those fields up directly.
Okay. I see what you're saying. Thank you.
And to piggyback on that conversation, thank you for bringing it up. I want to make sure I have an accurate understanding of the loader process versus the manual process. I asked this in a call outside of the webinar a while back. I just want to make sure I have it right. So when I am putting a file through a loader to enter new accounts, if they do have any amounts listed in the, credits after date, fees after date, all of those wonderful new columns that we have to have, my previous understanding is that I would have to put them through a separate transaction loader after the assignment loader. I'm hoping I have that wrong.
No, you have that correct, and it's for the same reason that those have to be entered as itemization transactions, because it's a calculated field. So when you load a new account, you can load an itemization balance, right? That's as of the itemization date. But if you have itemization transactions that apply to that, i.e. interest or fees that happened after the itemization date, those would need to be loaded as in a separate loader.
Okay. So if they have amounts in 3 of those columns, I would have to put the file through an account loader and then a separate transaction loader for each column that has amounts in it.
That is correct. That is correct. Now, if they have those in a file like that, then just as I was mentioning to Julie for manual entry, right? As long as you have the value correct and you're able to load it as a single itemization transaction impacting the balance in the correct way, you can certainly use that same file and run that same file through a different loader. You may need to do it 3 times, right? 3 instances if they've got the interest in one column and they have the fees in a column, and they have, so you've got one record, right? And you have these single values, then you would need to basically set up your loaders, right, to do each of those values, and then set that up in a job so that you could basically run the job and have it hit all of those things one after the other, right? Load the account, now load the interest, now load the, or itemization interest, now load the itemization fees. That's certainly doable. I know there may be some people who don't have, what they need, in terms of they'll need to reach out to support maybe for some assistance in that, but it's absolutely doable.
So I understand that process. And we are going to obviously work to meet that. I feel that having so many pieces in the process does leave room for human error. For instance, we have thousands of clients. So we're now facing having to edit or rebuild thousands of loaders. If we then need another +4 loaders for every one loader, that's even more to go in and build. And if we say, okay, well, we think most of our clients are going to have zeros in all of these columns, but then we now have to manually inspect every file to see if they're all zeros. If there's not zeros, okay, we need to go put it through this process. If in a future enhancement, and I know this will be a long process to make all of this as smooth as possible, if it could be mapped within the same account assignment loader so the transaction is happening based on that mapping, it would reduce the process so much.
Sure. Sure, and I'm hearing you. I think that might be something that'll work for some of our customers, and certainly would be something we can add to the list of requests for enhancements on this. I know we do have some people that kind of have to load the different transactions because they have to have it available for the consumer. So but I completely understand that question for people who are loading a total.
And I would second that suggestion. That's a good suggestion.
Okay.
Cheryl, can I ask another question?
Of course.
And this, I would imagine people are thinking this too. So my original understanding was if we used, let's say, last statement date as our itemization date, because there probably are no transactions after that date. I thought, okay, well, that would make life a lot easier. But then I thought it was going to affect how we report to the credit bureau. But when I was talking to Kevin about it, he seems to think that no, the client last service date. So my logic for my credit bureau is based on, if it's medical, it has to be 180 days from date of assignment or from date of service, and then we hold on to it for at least 45 to 60 days before we report. If we use last statement date and the itemization date in the itemization field, so that we don't have to fill in a lot of those things. Now, I know when the letter goes out, the debtor may not recognize that date, but on some of our smaller clients that we have to manually load, maybe using that date would be easier because of the itemizations. But can I verify that that's not going to affect our logic for credit reporting? Because if I use last statement date, which is yesterday, then and it's going to wait 180 days past that, then that's going to mess up my credit reporting.
So Victoria, could you open the Metro 2 vendor, the credit reporting vendor on your screen?
Can.
So to address just this question, I believe if you see, let's see, I can't remember if this is on here yet. Okay, we have a group on service date. I believe, Joe, can you chime in? Do we have a use itemization date is coming in the future?
It is coming. Yep. And
It's
then
coming. Okay.
in the next release, actually,
Okay.
the date open field is what
The
you're looking
date
for
opened
there.
field. Victoria, can you drop that field down where it says date opened? Okay. So this is, Julie, this is what's, so eventually the itemization date is going to be added to this list here. And so
Okay.
you get to decide, right, which date you're
we're
using
using
as the date opened for credit reporting. So
Oh,
if you
okay.
use itemization date, then yes, that could impact you. If you're using something else, then but you get to make that decision when you're credit reporting. And with regard to the other question about what you're using, it's from our perspective, it's what will work for you to meet your requirements ultimately.
Right. That part I get. So as long as I don't have itemization date, which is not there yet, checked on this Metro 2, it's not going to affect my current logic reporting to the credit bureau. As long as we keep filling in client last service date and delinquency date on our screen like we're doing now, it should report like it always has.
The one that you're using. That's my understanding. Yes. So far we haven't heard anything different.
Okay. Thank you.
Great questions, everybody.
If we still have time, can I ask one more?
Oh yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Credit reporting, since we're on that subject, and I know that wasn't part of today, but
is it related to Reg F?
Yes.
Okay. Go ahead.
Okay, so we got the 14-day mail return thing. If you get a mail return in the first 14 days, you are not allowed to report to the credit bureau unless you get a hold of them and get a new address and send out the validation or blah, blah, blah. Is the system going to, we're going to mark the mail as mail returned either manually or through our letter vendor. Is the system going to automatically check that do not credit report if it's in the first 14 days? Or are we going to have to manually do it, or our letter vendor input file is going to have to do it?
I am going to recommend that you include it in your logic as I would for any of the requirements for credit reporting, because it's going to be available for that. But Joe, can you address the question of if there's the automatic related to the automatic inclusion or exclusion?
I don't believe we have anything automatic occurring, but you should be able to develop workflow using logic blocks uh, and return dates in
Yep.
order to prevent them from going on credit reporting.
So using
Okay.
your credit reporting eligibility logic block, the one that you have that defines accounts
Right.
eligible for that, you would want to include that returned date window aging in there.
Okay. And so then this is my other question is, so the mail returns and we stop it from credit reporting. And then on day 20, one of my agents gets a hold of them and we send out the letter, or she tells them on the phone, or whatever the case is. How am I going to get my agents to remember to uncheck that do not credit report? What I was talking to Kevin about was it would be really nice if that's the only one that when you check it, it doesn't pop up as a pill on, I don't know about the texting one, but the, do not call, do not mail, do not email pops up as a pill on the main screen or on, below your summary screen, but that one does not. So human error is, I want to make sure these get reported if they're supposed to be. How, is there a way that they're going to, without me telling them they have to remember to do that?
Well,
because like if the system checked it and it showed up there, do not credit report, like it says, do not mail, do not email, they're going to know, oh, I got their information. We got to get this on their credit. But if it's not showing, is there a way to make that show? Or
all right, Julie, I think, are you saying that your agents are manually identifying them, flagging them for credit reporting?
no, I'm saying just in this 14-day rule, which is Reg F, we're not allowed to, in the past, we could credit report whether we had an address or not. In Reg F, we're not allowed to credit report in those first 14 days. I mean, we're not allowed to, if we get a mail return, we're not allowed to credit report. But then if the agent gets a hold of them or we get a new address or whatever, we can credit report. If we have logic that unchecks them from credit reporting, but then in the meantime, we get new information, how are we going to know, how are we going to get that back on their report or get it to their report?
Okay.
Without somebody having to remember.
Right. So if you're sending them a new letter, the 14 days should apply to the new letter, shouldn't it?
Right. But will the system automatically put a Metro 2 flag on the account then if the address is not mail return anymore?
It's not, basically the eligibility for it to go and be flagged will usually be set up in your logic, and it's going to look at that. If you plug that 14-day window in, it's going to look at that each time. Does that?
Even if we have it unchecked, or I get, I'm new to ACE, so there's a lot of things I don't understand yet. If we set up logic with the new Reg F and tell it, hey, if this mail returns in the first 14 days, you have to make sure it doesn't go on their credit. Is that it's going to take the Metro 2 flag off the account, or it's going to uncheck the box?
The idea is that it doesn't put the Metro 2 flag on the account to start with.
Okay, right? So it's not going to be the box that's checked per se. So then if we get a new address and send a new validation and the status stays within the statuses that need to be reported, it will automatically go on there according to the parameters set up by our credit reporting.
Right. Yeah, it's basically your job when it's running and flagging accounts as eligible. Won't when it shouldn't, and then will when it should. So once something changes on the account that makes the account eligible again based on that logic, the system will flag those accounts.
Okay. All right, good. Thank you.
Okay. Good stuff. Anybody else?
Okay, well, if we don't have any last questions, then we will go ahead and end our session today. So any last questions? All right, well, we'll go ahead and end it here then. If you think of a question later, please send us a ticket into support so we can get that answered for you. Otherwise, we will see you at our phase 4 webinar on November 24th. All right. Thank you, everyone. See you next
Thanks,
time.
Victoria.
Yep. Bye-bye.